John, look, this was something that was completely unexpected, right? And I guess the problem is that the president is now scrambling to try and make sure that the peace process is still in place until he comes up with a plan B.
That's right. Well, of course, he said that before the referendum, he said there is no plan B if it's a no vote. Well, he's going to have to come up with one pretty quickly. As he said, it was a huge surprise. All of the polls last week showed like 60% margin in favour. But now what he's done is he's ordered his negotiators to go back to Cuba to negotiate with the leaders of the FARC to see where we go from here. But very interestingly and very importantly, the leaders of the FARC have said they're going to respect the ceasefire for now. The president has said the same thing. So this is obviously a huge setback for the peace process, but it's not over yet.
Right, so negotiators, I guess, are resuming talks, right? The president, I mean, this accord took 4 years to lock down. Can they keep the peace agreement whilst having, stronger, I guess, forcing the rebels to have stronger punishment? Would that be approved?
Well, I think there certainly, and you saw this in the Northern Ireland peace process, you saw it in this sort of different sense in South Africa as well. All of the parties have invested so much in this over the last 4 years that no one's going to give up on this for now. But really, it seems like one of the real big fault lines in the referendum campaign was about how much immunity or how much punishment to the perpetrators of the FARC, the FARC militants should receive. The opposition, the No campaign, were certainly saying that they were getting away with impunity, and now the president actually disputes this. But it will probably come down to what sort of punishment is meted out to the sort of self-confessed perpetrators of terror.
Jane, how does this translate into your world? I mean, again, I guess, first of all, the polls, again, got it wrong. And I'm not trying to draw a parallel with Brexit, but it's difficult, right, to look at political risk in Europe.
It really is. I mean, again, we can look at referendum in Hungary again. There's so much political risk in Europe and in South America, too. I mean, for my world, the Colombian situation probably plays more into Mexico more than anything else. Mexico, often in the currency world, seen as a proxy, really, for investment into Colombia. It's a massive disappointment in terms of business investment for Colombia going forward, and probably the whole region, but certainly in terms of foreign exchange, politics is huge, and right now there is this predominancy of voters to go against what polls are suggesting and go for protest. And I think we see this again.
John Fraher, the New York Times today has a beautiful vignette of two people who voted no and two people that voted yes on the referendum. One of them is the Consul General, who, of course, would have voted yes for it, Maria Isabel Nieto Jaramillo. And she has one statement that really brought me back to David Kirkpatrick's The Facebook Effect. He opens that book on Colombia and on the power of social media to drive politics. With your global remit, is that what happened here? Is once again social media changed the dialogue?
Well, certainly social media is extremely important in political debates right around the world. It has this sort of quite polarizing effect where people get sucked into their own sort of psychological bubbles, and a reinforcing effect, if you like. But I think with Colombia, I think if turnout was very low, that's an important thing to look at. And a lot of people are pointing to the impact that Hurricane Matthew had on the Caribbean regions, which were expected to be quite strongly pro the deal. We only saw 19% turnout up there. So, social media obviously across the board globally is becoming more and more important in polarizing people's views. But in Colombia's case, that might be less. So I look more at these one-off weather effects.
Well, John, help me get smarter here, as a number of people asked over the weekend, and I didn't have an intelligent answer. Could there be more warfare and more rebellion off of this vote?
Well, as I said, I mean, I think both sides are so committed to this that it will be, I think it'll be a while before we would see any sort of retrenchment back into violence. It's true that President Santos did make a big point in his campaign that if it's a no vote, we'll see a return to war. Who knows what will happen down the line, but for now, it seems like both sides, the government and the FARC side of things, are determined to try to figure out a way somehow to salvage this and make it work.
What's the timeline on this? And I don't, we haven't been in this kind of situation before, but if they don't get an agreement in the next, 2-3 weeks, then they start over? Just give a sense of
I think that we're in uncharted territory here. I mean, no one saw this coming, so it's very hard to say. But again, given the fact that they were working on this for 4 years, I would say they're going to give it more than 2 or 3 weeks to see.
Can they have a second referendum because voter turnout was so low?
Well, anything is possible in these situations. I mean, referenda are not usually politically binding, and and governments, as we saw here in the UK, are not obliged to act on them. But again, when you put so much store in a referendum, it's hard to ignore the will of the people. I wouldn't necessarily rule out perhaps if they can negotiate a new deal, which FARC has ruled out, but if they did manage to negotiate a new deal, they could go back and put that to the electorate. That's certainly possible.